Hello, this is DrPaulCottrell, and I've been asked to do some videos on Marburg. I haven't had the chance to do it, so I figured that I'd do it now. Um, I'll go into a little bit more detail in probably a PowerPoint to explain the pathology of it, the genomics, all right, a little bit about the virus. But Marburg is a hemorrhagic type virus, all right? And that this virus is a negatively non-segmented RNA genome, all right? So it has a little bit additional complication to the genome. It has to go into in a positive sense to be able to code for its proteins, and it's deadly, and it's also one of the probably top 30 or top 50 pathogens that can be weaponized. All right. So there are cases throughout many years where there's been Marburg, all right, but there's been kind of an outbreak lately, on top of the mpox, on top of the highly pathogenic avian flu, and you know RSV, and obviously SARS-CoV-2 and all the other stuff that's going on. All right. Now, in terms of like what's to worry about the most, I would say um, mpox is higher on the threat level than Marburg. So I would say it's Marburg right now, then mpox, then highly, uh, I would say, no, I'd say Marburg, then highly pathogenic avian flu as in terms of threat level increasing, mpox, because I think the mpox is actually more problematic than the highly pathogenic avian flu. And then um, some sort of combination of RSV, influenza A, and SARS-CoV-2 during the cold season as threat levels, as a percentage of you contracting it, all right, as a threat level. Marburg is on the low end of this, but it is interesting to cover. It has some unique features as a virus that I'll go into more detail in a PowerPoint like I did with the mpox. So if you haven't seen the mpox PowerPoint that I've done, please take a look at it. All right. I think it's Gen 0 in the 50s, 40s, 50s, 60s, somewhere in there when I did the mpox PowerPoint. So it's the mpox detail overview. So I'll do a Marburg version of it. All right. But I want to just kind of cover Marburg a little bit. I haven't done it. I've done, you know, West Nile and Triple E and all these other viruses that we're kind of concerned about. But Marburg, I haven't really focused on. Mpox is actually a more complicated virus, all right, than let's say Marburg. Right? The pox viruses are very complex, all right, but I'll go into some further detail. But it is a negatively sensed RNA genome, non-segmented, and it has some unique pathologies that follow in that bucket of hemorrhagic diseases. So we're going to go over some of the videos there on it, and then we'll end the transmission for this, and then I'll do another one on some other pathogens, another video on some other pathogens. But before we begin, I'd like to ask you, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the supplements to help boost up your immune system, detoxify your body, increase your longevity, slow down the aging process, and just get healthier. All right. Now, one of the products that I have on my store that is really important for you to take is zeolite. Zeolite is a detoxifier it will soak up, it'll bind to heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals that should not be in your body. How it works is zeolite is a negatively charged molecule and attaches to positively charged heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals. Zeolite will also get rid of PFAS. Now, forever chemicals, right? But it takes a little bit longer. Now, what's important is not just to detoxify your body, but to find out how is it getting into your body. And a lot of people don't realize that forever chemicals, toxins, heavy metals, it's about the food, all right? Make sure you filter your water. I use a 5-level filtration system. It's called Zero Water that you can get on Amazon. Make sure that you stop eating packaged, pre-processed foods. Those have a lot of preservatives and chemicals in it that you don't want in your body. And try to eat more organic, healthier type foods, all right? Try to stay away from pesticides and try to filter your air in your house, all right? Because there's chemtrails, there's chemicals being sprayed on our lawns and in our communities, especially when they were trying to kill mosquitoes because of West Nile. We have chemicals, on our produce, pesticides. So we're bombarded in our food supply and in our water supply of these chemicals. In addition, some types of clothing will have these forever chemicals, especially water repellent type material. Or cookware, certain types of cookware will have forever chemicals. So you want to try to mitigate that and try to get those types of products away from your life. And that way you're not exposed to them as much. We can't 100% not be exposed to these chemicals, nor can you 100% get it out of your body, but you can get a lot of it out of your body. And it starts with stopping ingesting it. Filter your water, stop eating processed foods. If you want to get a little bit more extreme, you can filter your air in your house, getting, air purifiers and stuff like that. But the point here is that mitigate your exposure, then start to detoxify your body. And you can detoxify your body by doing cleanses like colon cleanses, liver cleanses, kidney cleanses, but also taking items like zeolite to bind to these forever chemicals, heavy metals, toxins, right? So again, it's a negatively charged molecule that will bind to positively charged toxins and chemicals. What happens is once that bind takes place, about 6 to 8 hours later, you urinate the toxin out, and that way you're filtering it out of your body. Make sure you drink filtered water to help you urinate. But the whole point here is to detoxify your body. This zeolite you can take year round. Some people prefer to maybe detoxify once or twice a year. So if you are someone that wants to detoxify every day throughout the whole year, just take a couple drops underneath your tongue and drink filtered water. Take it every day, do it year round. If you are the type of person that wants to do this only once or twice a year, take a few drops, put it on your tongue, drink the filtered water until the bottle is done, and do that once or twice a year. It's very easy to do, all right? If you're on medication, you want to talk to your doctor first, because zeolite might actually bind to your medication and bring down your serum concentration. So the doctor might have to increase your dosage while you're detoxifying your body, all right? Or just take a much lower dose of zeolite to maintain to help with your concentration of your medication. So there's many different ways to do it. But if you're on medication, you're detoxifying your body. Even if you're doing a colon cleanse, you should talk to your doctor first, because you don't want to bring down your serum concentration levels of your medication. But zeolite works. It binds to heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals. Binds to the forever chemicals, and over time you'll be able to get this thing out. But it's really important to stop it at the source, and that is your food and your water. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. and get the zeolite. Detoxify your body once or twice a year or year round. It's up to you. All right, so let's take a look at what's going on with Marburg.
Announcement aiming to reassure the public after Rwanda declared an outbreak of Marburg virus disease. Rwanda's Minister of Health has insisted that the situation is under control. There is no authorised treatment for the disease, but Rwanda has received hundreds of doses of a vaccine under trial to give to those most at risk, including hospital workers.
We have been communicated that the vaccines are available. I think we took it as a great opportunity to have it and to boost our immune system, and then also stay strong to SARS.
Even though the vaccine is still under trial, some think it will prove to be invaluable for health workers and those who have been in contact with confirmed cases.
For every single medication or vaccine, safety is number one. So we know that it's safe, and for health professionals, it's very easy to understand. So safety is number one. The vaccine is safe.
Some doctors have said that so far, they have not witnessed any major side effects from the vaccine, which comes from the US-based Savin Vaccine Institute.
Don't even expect much, because I saw people who took vaccine yesterday but one, and they didn't have many symptoms, so I don't expect much side effects from this vaccine.
More than 200 people in the country have received the vaccine so far. Rwanda announced the outbreak at the end of September and has reported that 13 people have died from the disease.
All right, so Rwanda, 13 died, and an inoculation program to try to mitigate the spread. All right, so that's that video. Let's take a look at this video. I'm a little curious on this one.
Excuse me, can you tell me where the train station is located?
Извините, вы можете сказать мне, где находится?
So today we'll be talking all about the outbreak of the Marburg virus disease.
Play music video.
This disease is very severe and often very fatal in humans. Human Marburg virus infection results from prolonged exposure to mines or caves that are inhabited by specific fruit bats. Another key thing, though, is that people cannot transmit the disease before they have symptoms, but they remain infectious as long as their blood contains the virus. So what are some symptoms we look out for? It's important to know that there's an incubation period for this virus. So this can vary from 2 to 21 days. So some symptoms to look for are high fever, severe headache, severe malaise, muscle aches, pain, watery diarrhea, abdominal pain, cramping abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting can even begin on the third day. You can also have this non-itchy rash that are reported in some patients between 2 and 7 days on the onset of the illness. And from day 5, patient may develop this hemorrhagic manifestation, including fresh blood in their vomitus and in their feces, bleeding from their nose, their gums, and their vaginas, bleeding at the site where you get an injection or an IV access, and it can also involve their central nervous system where you get confused, you're irritable, and you get more aggressive. A key other symptom is orchitis, which is inflammation of one or both testes. In very fatal cases, death occurs most often between 8 and 9 days after the onset of symptoms, and is usually preceded by severe blood loss or shock. It's also important to know that now we have Marburg virus being spread from human to human through direct contact, like broken skin or mucous membrane with blood, secretions, organs, or other bodily fluids of infected people. And there's transmission with surfaces and material like bedding and clothing that are contaminated with these fluids. Another important thing to note is that healthcare workers have frequently been infected by treating patients suspected of this virus. Burial ceremonies or funeral that involve direct contact with the body of the deceased can contribute to the transmission. In regards to treatment, early intensive supportive care includes rehydration, and treatment for the specific symptoms can improve the survival, but there are currently no vaccine or any antiretroviral treatment approved for this virus. We want to reduce our risk of this disease by reducing our risk of bat-to-human transmission, reducing the risk of human-to-human transmission, and the communities that get affected by it should inform the public and the health system so the necessary outbreak containment measures can be taken. Healthcare workers should always take the standard precaution when taking care of patients, including basic hand hygiene, respiratory hygiene, use of personal protective equipment, safe injection practices, as well as safe and dignified burial practices. Marburg virus transmission via infected semen has been documented up to 7 weeks after clinical recovery, and we recommend that these male survivors should follow safer sex practices for up to 12 months.
All right, so that's that one. Let's listen to this one. So everything's going on in Rwanda.
Right. The $565,000 trunk or treat giveaway is going on now through October 26th at Empire City Casino. Spin and win your break in Rwanda.
All right then. So we are looking at
and we should be concerned because of how highly
invest in Lift Aircraft, the company with $5 million in government contracts, proven to make
Africa this afternoon. Rwanda is a nation of over 13 million people with a limited pool of medical professionals with an estimate of about 1,500 doctors available to provide medical care. And it has been hit with 26 active cases of Marburg virus with 12 fatalities reported as of September 29, 2024. Of course, this is looking to heavily strain the already overwhelmed healthcare system in Rwanda, with over 80% of those affected by the virus being healthcare workers. There are questions as to how much of this is going to spread to the rest of Africa and how susceptible other African nations are. We're being joined by Dr. Dan Abia, who is a medical expert from Uyo this morning to have this particular conversation. Good afternoon, Dr. Abia. Good to have you on the show.
Good afternoon.
All right, then let's delve right into the conversation. I think a fair place to start is to ask, has Nigeria registered the presence of Marburg virus? Should we be concerned?
I didn't get the question. As Nigeria.
I'm asking if Nigeria has registered, any case of the Marburg virus, and should we be concerned?
Yes, we should be concerned. If I can get the question right, should we be concerned since Nigeria has recorded the case?
Have we, on the one hand, the question is, have we recorded a case? And if at all, if it's yes or no, should we be concerned with the rise of the virus on the continent?
We've not recorded a case to the best of my knowledge of my last research, but currently it is an outbreak in Rwanda.
All right then. So we are looking at.
And we should be concerned because of how highly infectious this disease is, and because of how high the fatality rate of this virus is. So it should be a big concern for the public. So, as far as we have it at our doorstep in Africa here, we should put things in place to, prepare in case the outbreak comes this way.
Okay, so in talking about Marburg virus, what exactly is Marburg virus? What is it? What's the virus about? How did it, originate, and how does it actually affect humans?
Okay, Marburg virus is a virus that belongs to a family of what they call viruses, similar family with Ebola. In fact, Marburg virus has similar signs and symptoms like Ebola. If you can remember the Ebola virus we had.
Absolutely.
Good. Hello?
Yes, I'm with you loud and clear.
Yes. So now Marburg virus basically it came from it was discovered. How is somebody infected from bats? Bats, it looks like a reservoir. Bats are reservoirs of this virus. Rosetus, not bats, to be specific. There are reservoirs of this virus. This virus was first isolated in these bats, and its spread can be traced to these bats. And these bats actually are concentrated in bat-infested areas, caves, mines, and all of that. So, moving forward, the virus itself, the bat carries this Marburg virus, and it can be
in 2004 to 2006. All right. So from December 1st, 2004 to November 2006, for $200,000, Dr. Barrick received an NIH grant. And in that NIH grant, he did Marburg virus reverse genetics and pathogenesis. Bats, Barrick, Marburg.
via direct contact. You understand me? Through broken skin, mucous membrane, you understand bodily fluids of infected persons. And the virus itself was first discovered not even in Africa. It was first discovered in Germany in 1967. And that's how it earned his name in a city called Marburg. That's the first place it was discovered. And I guess the virus was now named after that city. It was first discovered in Germany, and from Germany, Marburg City, Frankfurt, these were the areas of its early discovery in 1967. But as the years went by, the spread got to other countries, even in the Soviet Union, then before the DR Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo, now finally it's already in Rwanda this year. So the virus can be traced back to as early as 1967.
So what we currently know is that Rwanda is the epicenter of the Marburg virus as we speak. As you know, they already have 29 active cases, but over the years we have registered the virus in other parts of the continent. With the statistics already given with regards to medical professionals in the country, and which they are the ones worst hit by the virus, how do you think that they're coping in the face of this, disease, as it were?
I didn't get that last part, Kelly.
How do you think that the healthcare workers in Rwanda are currently facing? They are the highest percentage of infected persons with the virus.
Yes, of course, the people at risk are at the highest risk are the healthcare providers in Rwanda. So what's your question?
So I am asking, in the face of the dwindling numbers for healthcare workers, how do you think that they're combating with all of that and still providing Medicare, in the nation?
Oh, okay.
This is the reason why I've canceled my internet subscription.
What if I told you that there's no such thing as no internet connection? It's an artificially created problem so that internet providers could pocket cash from roaming fees.
Oh, okay. In cases like this, they have to activate what they call a control mechanism, meaning that patients that have come in contact patients that are infected and people that are come in contact, they have to do what they call contact tracing. They have to put in place, patients have to be isolated. There are so many things that has to be done. Awareness has to be created to the people on what to do once those signs and symptoms or someone around you is presenting with signs and symptoms that are suggestive of the Marburg virus. Enough awareness must be done. Infected patients have to be isolated or what we call quarantine. Basically, and health workers have to activate preventive protocols on working with patients that are infected already. So things like face mask, the attire to prevent getting in contact with bodily fluid have to be put in place. There are so many things that have to be put in place, and I think the Rwandan health system is doing that currently to battle the outbreak.
So we can tell that there is no vaccine available for the Marburg virus. Only, the vaccines available are only on clinical trials. So with this, how then are we handling the spread of the virus as it were? If there are no vaccines, what treatments are available, to address the issue?
Come again.
We're talking about the fact that there are currently no vaccines available for Marburg virus. So what treatments are available, to combat the spread of the virus?
Okay, you know what treatment is available?
Yes, treatments, and the fact that there are no vaccines available yet.
Okay, basically, patients that are already infected can be managed for secondary diseases or secondary ailments like keeping the patient hydrated, monitoring the person's oxygen level, and treating with antibiotics, antifungal, and all of that. Secondary treatment, a primary vaccine for the virus isn't available at this point. But of course, the symptoms can be treated just to keep the patient alive. So, although the prognosis is not very good because of how fatal the virus is.
So talking about the prognosis of the disease, how life-threatening is the Marburg virus? Maybe even as compared to the mpox, how concerned should we be?
The case fatality rate, though you mean,
yes.
The prognosis,
yes.
61.9%.
So an average of how many persons may die as a result of contacting the virus?
Well, on an average, if 10 people, for example, are infected, have the virus, it's very 6 out of 10.
They probably die.
Yes.
So 6 out of 10. So 60. So he's saying 60% if you contract. I don't know. That seems it might be even a little bit higher. I don't know. But the thing is that if you contract it, it's bad. Just like Ebola. All right. All these hemorrhagic viruses, they are very, very problematic. The thing is that the transmission mechanism isn't very good. All right, so it dies out. It's kind of the reason why Ebola, it's bad, but it doesn't have a big area of contagion because it dies off quick because it takes the patient out fast because they bleed out, literally. That's why it's hemorrhagic. Right, so he said that there wasn't inoculations available, and that's not true. I mean, there are inoculations available, so maybe he misheard what she was saying.
You're saying 6 out of 10 infected persons may probably die as a result of the virus.
Exactly. Yes.
All right then. So one of the questions I'm going to come back to is Nigeria is not, even highlighted as one of the countries that may, get the Marburg virus because of our topography and where we are situated. Countries that are more susceptible are those that have the back, topography. So looking at all of this, how does Nigeria prepare itself in case of tourism contracted Marburg virus in that sense?
Well, we have a
Cookie, so beautiful. I wish I could have this cinematic overlay. Cookie would have loved that. These mushrooms make you feel better. Like, a lot better.
well, we have in Nigeria our health system has what we call the epidemiology departments, which have the technical know-how and the skills to handle outbreaks. We have disease center control, center for disease control. Sorry, so they are the ones that are tested with the skills on how to handle these outbreaks. But although Nigeria hasn't recorded any outbreak yet, but I believe, of course, things are put in place to still battle it if it comes this way, because it's just very similar to Ebola. Mm-hmm. It's very similar to Ebola. In fact, you can't differentiate it by the clinical symptoms with Ebola. You can't. The only time you can actually differentiate Marburg virus and Ebola is after doing under the microscope. That's when you can differentiate it, and during taking of history of the patient. So in that of Marburg virus, there's always a history of someone either working in the mine or someone that has gotten in contact with bats or something like that.
Fruit bats,
yeah. The signs and symptoms with Ebola are similar.
Okay. So just to wrap this up for those of our viewers that are watching us from the African countries that can contact this particular virus, I'd like for you to reiterate how we can actually handle ourselves if one was to contact it or we see these symptoms around us. What are the safety measures that everyone needs to be more aware of in the face of the Marburg virus as we wrap up this afternoon?
I didn't get to this thing.
I'm asking you to just rerun the awareness that everybody needs in the face of the Marburg virus. If I see someone who has...
I'm going to stop that video, but I'm going to read you the cases on Marburg here, all right? Marburg started as supposedly a lab leak, at least record outbreaks going all the way back to 1967. It looked like it started as a lab leak. There were 31 cases, human cases, 7 deaths. Started in Marburg and Frankfurt in West Germany. And then there were 3 cases and then 1 death in Africa, Kenya. That was in 1975. In 1980, there were 2 cases in Kenya, 1 death. In 1987, Kenya, 1 case, 1 death. In 1988, Soviet Union, 1 case, 1 death. That was a laboratory accident. 1990, Soviet Union, 1 case, 1 death, also laboratory accident. 1998 to 2000, 154 cases, 128 deaths. So this was 83%. Remember what I said that I think it's a little higher than 60%. So you may get that 50, 60% range when you have low cases, but you actually see the actual dynamic when you have a higher caseload. You see the true statistics. So, but the issue with the 1998-2000 outbreak with Marburg was that there were 2 versions. There were 2 different Marburg viruses. They call it the MAR-V and the RAVN virus for co-circulating. All right, from 2004, remember it was December 2004 to 2006 when the reverse genetics were being conducted by Barrick. 2004 to 2005, Angola, Marburg, 374 deaths, 329, 90%. 2007, Uganda, 4 cases, 1 death. 2008, the Netherlands and Uganda, 1 case, 1 death. So that doesn't make sense. I mean, maybe this person was from Uganda and moved and went to the Netherlands. I'm not sure why it's 1 case, 1 death. It looks like that number may be wrong. 2012, Uganda, 18 cases, 9 deaths. 2014, Uganda, 1 case, 1 death. 2017, Uganda, 3 cases, 3 deaths. 2021, New Guinea, 1 case, 1 death. 2022, Ghana, 4 cases, 3 deaths. 2023, Equatorial Guinea, 25 cases, 11 deaths. March 2023, Tanzania, 8 cases, 5 deaths. And September 2024, Rwanda, 26 cases, 8 deaths. But this data set isn't updated. So I think there's 9 cases, there's 9 deaths now. So it can run anywhere from 25% to 100% death rate. Now, these small samples, you're not going to get the death rate. The real death rate looks like about in these higher numbers. You know, it could be anywhere from 60 to 90%. All right. So with that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Bring down inflammation by taking turmeric. This is also an antioxidant. Very important to bring down inflammation, soak up those free radicals to boost up your immune system. In addition, ashwagandha root helps to control cortisol levels and glucose levels, so that it'll bring them down. It will help to reduce that sympathetic response, so it will help with bringing you back into parasympathetic mode. In addition, this will bring down inflammation and help with the immune system. It's synergistic with turmeric, and by controlling your blood glucose levels and your cortisol levels, right, and bringing down that inflammatory response, you're boosting up your immune system and your cardiovascular system. Your cardiovascular system, it starts that inflammation at the vascular level, at the inside of in your vessels. Inflammation will start causing a disruption and eventually plaque buildup. Well, if you bring down that, you lower that inflammation, you're reducing your chances of cardiovascular disease. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the turmeric and the ashwagandha to boost up your immune system, lower your chances of cardiovascular disease, and bringing down that inflammation, that chronic inflammation that is very prevalent in the United States, will help to slow down the aging process. All right, what's going on with Johns Hopkins here?
Welcome to Public Health on Call, a podcast from the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, where we bring evidence, experience, and perspective to make sense of today's leading health challenges. If you have questions or ideas for us, please send an email to publichealthquestion@jhu.edu. That's publichealthquestion@jhu.edu for future podcast episodes.
This is Lindsay Smith-Rogers. Today, we look into the Marburg virus outbreak in Rwanda, which has sickened 46 people and killed 12. Stephanie Desmond talks to Dr. Kari Debink, a virology expert at Johns Hopkins, about the origins of Marburg, a rare but deadly virus, how it's similar to and different from Ebola, and what the risk is for people around the world. Let's listen.
Kari Debink, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
So today's topic is Marburg virus. And I'd just like to start right off. What is Marburg virus?
So Marburg virus, most people may not know about Marburg, but they've probably heard of Ebola. These are two very related viruses in terms of the symptoms that they cause, the mortality rates that they...
It's really important. Like I said, it's a hemorrhagic virus. It's very similar to Ebola, like she said, right? It's a negatively sensed RNA, so it has some complication where it has to go to a positively sensed RNA to be able to start coding its proteins. It's different than some of the other viruses that I've covered, like Mpox. Mpox is very complex, right? It's one of the pox viruses are probably some of the most complex viruses there are. Now, it has a high kill rate if you get it. And there's some inoculations being developed to elicit an immune response, but I don't think anything is really that commercialized. So, I think a lot of this is, testing related. I don't think there's a lot of clinical data that show that there is an effective treatment or an effective inoculation to elicit antibodies. Treatments aren't, it's not that, there's not really good antivirals just for Marburg, all right? So that's part of the reason why it's high kill rate. Now, to take a page from, because you expel a lot of fluid, to take a page out of treatment of Ebola, they have noticed that patients do far better if you do early hydration, all right? Now, that's not a guarantee, but there seems to be a correlation, early hydration, that the patient outcome is better or can be better. All right. So hydration is important. Now, another point that is really important to bring up here is this Marburg is what is called a selective agent. All right. And in the United States, selective agents are bioweapons. All right. Pathogens that can be used as bioweapons. And we know from just the list that I mentioned to you that there was laboratory accidents taking place in the Soviet Union, all right? And the Soviet Union was weaponizing Marburg, but Barrick's lab had some activity going on with Marburg and reverse genetics, all right? That's not a good thing when it comes to, Marburg and weapon development and Barrick, all right? So keep in mind, this is one of those agents that have been weaponized, and we need to pay attention. Now, I don't think that this is, super high risk. I do think that Mpox, clade 1b, is much higher risk for developed nations than Marburg at this moment in time. But keep in mind, there were lab accidents going all the way back to the 1960s, Soviet Union in the 80s, and who knows what else has been going on.
And so you can kind of think of Marburg very interchangeably with Ebola. These are viruses that end up killing a large number of the people they infect, and it's usually through hemorrhagic fever. So what that means is basically that the virus kind of destroys the blood vessels and you end up getting bleeding from lots of different places.
So there's an outbreak going on currently in Rwanda, and I wanted to ask you a little bit about what that looks like right now and what people are concerned about.
Yeah, currently, as of October 5th, there were 46 confirmed cases, there were 12 deaths. And I think the thing that's alarming is that the majority of those are in healthcare workers. As you can imagine, if your healthcare workers are getting infected, then weakens the overall health infrastructure of the area. So I think that is a major problem. That's kind of where things lie right now. However, if you kind of look at the progress of the outbreak, you have cases, it seems to grow cases by cases, like every time they're reporting numbers. So as of right now, the cases are still going up. Hopefully, now that there's more international focus on this and attention, we'll start to see those numbers go down as there's more aid and care taken to make sure that they're identifying and containing the cases that they identify.
So I remember from Ebola, hazmat suits and goggles and boots and gloves. Is that what we should be seeing currently in Rwanda?
Yeah, so Ebola virus and Marburg virus are both pathogens that are typically worked at under the highest secure biosecurity level that there is. And so, yeah, protective gear is really important, and, if it's at all available. So yes, you would be seeing the highest level of protective gear that an area has available in working with cases of Marburg.
You're saying healthcare workers are among those who are dead. I mean, hospitals must be on high alert, and healthcare facilities knowing that anybody could come in with this virus.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of times what happens is the cases of something like Marburg or Ebola, they tend to first happen in more rural areas because that is where the contact with an infected animal would occur. And then they tend to spread from person to person from that original contact. So what happens is people will come into a hospital and people will, the hospital workers don't know that it's a Marburg case. And beginning few days of a Marburg case, it can mimic other types of infectious diseases. So often it's not known that it's, something as serious as Marburg until, it's already been allowed to infect healthcare workers. Now that it's a known outbreak.
What I've noticed by covering these types of things for the last over 4 years? You didn't get a whole lot of information from people that supposedly are experts. Trust me, when I do my PowerPoint, you're going to be very knowledgeable about Marburg. Just can't take these people anymore. I mean, it's obvious. You come in, you don't feel well, you're thinking that maybe it's dysentery, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden you test positive for Marburg. And then all of a sudden the whole hospital staff that was exposed to that patient are at risk. It's pretty freaking simple. And come on.
Like, people are taking higher precautions with anyone that comes in with symptoms that are consistent with a Marburg infection.
Now, the thing is that we're lucky. We're lucky that it is, it's in these, these outbreaks are, very localized. In this case, Rwanda, or Guinea, or wherever, right? But it's very localized, so you can set up Marburg clinics, and be able to be ready for these types of cases, very similar to what they do with Ebola. If there's an Ebola outbreak, they set up an Ebola hospital clinic, kind of like a MASH unit kind of thing, and everybody's protected, right? Now, maybe, you might have a case that comes in, they think it's maybe Ebola and it's not, but in most cases, these clinic personnel are already protected because they're assuming everybody coming in is Ebola because it's a specialized clinic. That's something what needs to happen with Marburg. You just take them to a regular hospital, then you're spreading it all over the place. So risk mitigation is really important.
The last decade and during the epidemic, and I'm wondering if there are concerns this could become another Ebola.
I mean, I think that there's always concern that a virus can spread. I do think that in this case, the cases were confirmed before it really had spread to multiple areas. I think, the biggest Ebola outbreak that we had, back in 2014-ish, a lot of that was because it spread so far before it was really known what it was. And so there was multiple countries involved at that point, and, just a really hard time containing cases. In this case, I think, so far it's really been restricted to Rwanda, and then I think maybe a travel related case or two that's been identified really quickly. So, I mean, at this point, I think it's pretty low risk for it to spread as widely as that Ebola outbreak in 2014. But there's always possibilities that somebody's missing something. But I think that they will contain it pretty quickly, and hopefully we won't see cases outside of the areas that it currently is.
We're also seeing a lot of testing for Marburg, and I am curious, is that because we know more about it than we ever have, or because it's happening closer to population centers? And obviously you have to understand the problem before you can attack it. And so I guess I'm wondering if this is a new development, is this a good development, and what else we might see?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we, for a lot of diseases now, we have more testing available than we ever have in the past. For Marburg, you can do PCR testing, which is really the best way to confirm that you actually have the specific virus, and that's available probably in most major cities. And then there's other tests you can look at the blood and look for, you know, viral proteins, you can look for antibodies, those kinds of tests. So yeah, I think the testing infrastructure is better than it has been in the past, both for Marburg and for other pathogens as well.
I read somewhere that this
plus the PCR capability build out because of the crisis in 2020. There's so many PCR machines now. There's so many sequencers now that it's our ability to detect something is so much quicker. Plus, setting up these assays, where you're detecting a certain protein or detecting a certain antibody is so much faster now with the biotech, the build out that has happened. But that's just detection. Treatment hasn't improved, and inoculation is somewhat experimental.
Already one of the largest Marburg outbreaks we've seen. That's a little scary to hear.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the biggest Marburg outbreak was in Angola, and that was about 250 people got infected at that point. So that was the biggest outbreak we had. So in terms of thinking about sizes of outbreaks of infectious disease, Marburg is pretty low. However, that's still 46 people that have an awful disease at this point. And so it's not to minimize it, but just to say that like it's still, not to the scope that we've seen some of the Ebola outbreaks in the past.
Now, my understanding is there's no approved vaccine for Marburg, but at the same time, I've heard that there's an experimental vaccine that is being sent to Rwanda. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so there is a vaccine that is not licensed. I think I'll go into a little bit about why there probably isn't an approved vaccine at this point, but yeah, so there's the Saban Vaccine Institute sent about 700 doses of this experimental vaccine to Rwanda, and it's going to be used primarily in healthcare workers to protect the healthcare workers, and then hopefully that prevents spread to other people as well. It's a vaccine that is basically based on using the Marburg.
There's going to be a synergistic effect that may cause a disruption with the immune system for these healthcare workers. Crazy.
We call glycoproteins, the part that sticks to your cells and helps it enter the cells. Basically, they took that piece from Marburg and they put it into a different virus background, and then that is like what the vaccine is, so that your body generates antibodies against the part that allows the virus to infect. It's actually already been tested for safety in Uganda and Kenya. Those are two countries where we've previously seen Marburg outbreaks. And so there was kind of like first line testing just to make sure that the vaccine was safe and it wasn't causing major side effects. So now they feel safe sending it to Rwanda, to these healthcare workers, to see if they can get data on how well it protects against Marburg. Because a lot of these rare diseases where you have these like smaller outbreaks and then the virus goes away for a while, it's hard to actually do the testing necessary to show protection. So really the way to do that is to vaccinate people during an outbreak of the disease and just see, for those that are vaccinated, were they protected or not. So this is a way both to protect the healthcare workers there and to hopefully get a vaccine one step closer to being able to be licensed.
It's really hard to test the effectiveness of a vaccine when you can't give somebody a challenge vaccine. Like you can't say, here, I'm going to give you the vaccine and then I'm going to give you Marburg because it's so dangerous.
Well, and that's what we saw with the Ebola vaccine during that 2014 outbreak, is that prior to that, there really wasn't good enough data on how well it protected. And so what they did then is they basically did what they call ring vaccination, where anybody that if that was like high risk or like in contact with someone with Ebola, they vaccinated those people. And then they looked to see, over the course of the outbreak, how many people got it and how many people didn't. Were they vaccinated, unvaccinated?
This is basically a method that was done in the 1800s when they were starting to do these inoculations, during these outbreaks for typhus and mosquito-borne types of viruses, cholera,
to basically estimate an effectiveness based on how well the people that were vaccinated were protected. And that was very successful for Ebola. So I think in this case, they're focusing on vaccinating the healthcare workers first, but hopefully this, especially if they're not able to contain this outbreak, there'll be more vaccines that are given to a wider number of people.
It's fascinating that when you sit down and think about it, how hard it is to test these vaccines.
And there's a lot of experimental vaccines for a wide range of pretty rare diseases, but there just isn't the data to really show effectiveness and show safety in a wide number of people. And so it takes, disease outbreak before you can really get some of that data, unfortunately.
Has Marburg been around a long time?
So we don't know how long it's been around necessarily, but the first cases were actually identified in Germany and the former Yugoslavia in 1967. And this was actually in labs. So there were monkeys that were imported from Uganda to use in research. And so in the course of using those monkeys for research, basically some people got infected with Marburg, and that was how it was identified. And so, I'm
telling you, there's a lot of lab accidents that are taking place. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin K2. This is a dual purpose product. This will help with your bones and your joints, but also your cardiovascular system. It's synergistic with taking it with D3, vitamin D3. Please go to my store and get the vitamin K2. This is the MK7 molecule.
How long it's been circulating in populations in some of the countries where it's endemic, but that was the first time that it was actually characterized.
It feels like we're hearing about more and more of these zoonotic diseases, the diseases that spread from animals to humans and probably back again. Why is this?
There's a couple reasons, right? So
thank you for asking that question. Let Dr. Paul answer it. One problem is there's too much lab manipulation going on. For weapon development and for scientific research. Second issue is that there is an encroachment in some of these jungle type environments where there's a spillover effect because of human encroachment in natural reservoirs. That's another take on it. It's human encroachment, but also lab manipulation or lab manipulation.
First of all, we live in a much more global society than we ever did. There's more information exchange, between everybody all over the world, right? You have the internet, even in rural areas, you may have some, level of contact to more developed places. And so I guess there's just more information exchange, but there's also more travel. So it used to be that you didn't really come into contact with people that lived in a rural area of a Central or East African or West African country. But now, people travel all over the world, live all over the world, have family all over the world. And so there's just so much more travel. So I think some of these issues that people in the United States never used to think about because it didn't ever affect us, I think, it makes it a lot more real that things could come here. Not that it was never important before, but we just hear about it a lot more because people think that it could impact us in some way. I also think that there is, more contact maybe with animals or more into their habitats and, developing cities, and that contact just kind of happens more, I think, than it used to. With the case of Marburg, it's a virus that's transmitted, by this fruit bat, this Egyptian fruit bat. And, it has a specific range. And, most people aren't out in caves in a lot of these countries, going and interacting with a fruit bat. But there are people that do have a livelihood, of mining and things like that, where they are exposed to these bats or the feces, the urine, maybe the saliva of the bats, or the bats come out and they feed on fruit that humans eat, and those have deposits of urine or saliva or feces on them. And so there is that contact that is happening. And when you have more travel, when you have more interaction between rural areas and then more populated areas, there's a greater chance that you're going to get these diseases that were once isolated to small areas to spread to more population centers.
Kari Devin, thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome. It was great. Thank you.
I didn't learn much from her. but I don't learn much from many of these quote experts. The big takeaway is the outbreak with Marburg is low risk for developed nations. It is elevated risk for ones that are in Rwanda at this moment in time. Most likely, the antibody ring that they're going to try to create, right, this protective ring with this experimental inoculation probably will work. All right, I suspect it will work, and that this will die out. Very similar to, we're starting to see a stabilization of Mpox in the Congo region, right? Because of this protective ring that they're doing with the inoculations. Now, does that mean that something else will emerge out of that? Who knows? But, because of, antibodies providing selection pressure for mutation that circumvents the antibody, who knows? All right, lots of things it's all speculation at the moment. But what I'm seeing with Mpox and with the Marburg outbreak, low risk for developed nations. All right, Mpox, if there was an outbreak outside of the Congo region that went into developed nations, that is much more problematic than Marburg. Much more problematic. On Mpox, a pox virus versus a hemorrhagic virus, the pox virus is way more of a problem for the society at large because of the contagion rate. All right, because with the hemorrhagic, it will bleed out. You're going to have high death rate, but the total number of people is going to be much less. Well, you can have a very high rate of people infected with the Mpox. All right, because it's a pox virus. All you have to do is just look at history. When a society doesn't have antibodies, look at what happened with smallpox. All right, it's the same dynamic. Or just anyone that has had chickenpox, even though it's somewhat benign, and chickenpox is not a pox virus; it's actually herpes virus. But its transmission mechanism, its epidemiological curve is very similar. All right, it's highly contagious. Marburg burns itself out quickly, just like Ebola. So Ebola and Marburg is never going to be a big issue for a society like what we went through in 2020. All right. But in an outbreak area, it may have high death rate if you contract it. If you contract it, high death rate, Marburg. If you contract, if you're in an environment that has Mpox outbreak, you have a high probability of getting Mpox. All right, because it has an infection rate that can allow for further infection within the society, and it kind of burns through the society faster with Mpox versus Marburg. Right? Let me rephrase that. Mpox can spread throughout the society, and it doesn't die out fast, so it has a perpetualness within the society. With Marburg or Ebola, they're hemorrhagic, high death rate, but it burns out in the society quickly. So it really isn't that big of an issue for developed nations. It is a problem for undeveloped nations because of lack of healthcare, and it could spread, to their local region and cause havoc. That's true. All right. But for developed, I'm not too worried about Marburg, and I'm not too worried about Ebola. I never was. If you are next to someone that has Ebola or Marburg, you got a problem. But for the society at large, very low risk. Mpox, that's a totally different ballgame. Pox viruses are totally different ballgame. And that's why it's so important to keep it at bay and do that circle of inoculation to try to maintain that outbreak within the Congo region, even though we have onesie twosies that have gotten to other nations that are developed, but no major outbreak, which is a good thing, which is a very good thing. Marburg, low risk for developed nations. Higher risk, elevated risk for ones that are in Rwanda. And if you contract it, 60 to 90% chance of dying. But I'm not too worried. But there's some unique features of that virus that I think it's important to kind of dive into. On top of it, it's a selected agent for bioweapons. So, and Soviet Union had lab leaks while they were playing around with it as a bioweapon and all these kinds of things. So we got to keep that in mind. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the digestive enzyme complex. This helps break up carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. It lowers the stress on your pancreas. As we get older, our pancreas needs a little bit of help. So take the digestive enzyme complex to be able to have the enzymes that break up the food that you have to extract the energy. So this is also really good for recovery for people that are athletic. Take this, it'll break down your fuel source, and then you'll absorb that and you'll recover quicker. All right, so take it as for individuals that are in athletics or bodybuilding. Take it when you get older so you don't put so much stress on your pancreas. In addition, this has fibrinolytic enzymes in it, it's bromelain, and that will break up clots. In addition, this also will break up glycoproteins. That's really important, especially when you're talking about spikes and this and that and whatever. So please take this digestive enzyme complex to help with extracting energy, speeding up the breakdown of your fuel source so you can absorb it, put less stress on your pancreas, and if you're athletic, recover quicker. NAC is a new supplement that I've been adding to my protocol, my personal protocol. I also added it to my store. NAC, what it does is it brings up the glutathione levels, and glutathione pathway soaks up free radicals. It's synergistic with C60, so it's another way to soak up these free radicals. It also helps to detoxify your liver and your kidney, especially when you have been taking acetaminophen. In addition, NAC helps to produce a calming effect and reduce anxiety. That's important because in the United States, we have an active sympathetic nervous system. And so what happens is your cortisol levels go up, you have sleep deprivation, your glucose levels are up, you have this anxiety, and your immune system goes down. You don't want that. So you want to calm down that anxiety, go into parasympathetic, control your blood glucose levels, and then improve your immune system. So please take the NAC. It's an anti-aging supplement. This is what anti-agers and that whole subculture have been taking for a long time. I've added it to my protocol as a synergistic pathway with C60. This will bring up your glutathione levels and soak up those free radicals in a different way. But it also helps to detoxify your liver and your kidney and reduce anxiety. So please go to my store and get the NAC. Take this every day. Lastly, vitamin B complex, really important to help protect your neurons, to improve the health of your neurons. As we get older, we need to take vitamin B for cellular metabolism. In addition, B1 through B5 helps with the electron transport chain, which that is happening in the mitochondria. So you need B vitamins to help produce ATP. That's your energy source. So to help produce, to improve your neurons, improve your ATP levels, and improve your metabolism, please take this vitamin B complex. So that is the broadcast for this video. I think we learned a little bit about what's going on with Marburg. It's low risk for people in the United States and in Europe. It's a little bit more elevated risk in Rwanda. There's some experimental inoculations that are going to create this ring of protection. And you know, we'll go into a little bit more detail about Marburg, but it is a selective agent by the United States. There were lab leaks in '67. There were lab leaks in the '80s. And, you know, Barrick did work on Marburg between 2004 to 2006. And there was a major outbreak in 2004 to 2005. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Pay attention to what I have to say. I can inform you on geopolitical events, give you a little bit of perspective on the metaphysics of those geopolitical events, how to navigate through the financial markets, and how to improve your health. All right, so please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video, and get the supplements that I mentioned. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.